You ever have a moment so sharp and sudden it slices through the rest of your life? That was mine. 1 second, I was laughing over a glass of champagne. The next, I felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me. My name's Daniel. I'm 39 years old, and I've been living in Chicago for the past decade. I'm a pastry chef, not just the cupcake kind either. I've worked my way up from diners to five-star hotel kitchens, and I've finally made a name for myself in the city's food scene. My wife, Celeste, always said I had golden hands. Back then, I believed she meant it. The night of the annual culinary gala was supposed to be a celebration. I'd been nominated for a Regional Excellence Award, a big deal in my world. Celeste insisted we make a night of it. She wore this black velvet dress that clung to her like it had been sewn straight onto her skin. Hair done up, heels that clicked like confidence with every step. She looked beautiful, untouchable. The gala was held in this grand ballroom downtown, all glass chandeliers and jazz quartets, the air thick with truffle oil and ego. Everyone who was anyone in the culinary world was there: chefs, critics, food influencers, and shiny suits. And Julian. Julian was a food critic, flamboyant, theatrical, and always just a little too close when he spoke. He was known for stirring up drama almost as much as he was for his weekly column. I'd had a few run-ins with him before, nothing personal. But I always got this feeling the guy liked to poke, to provoke. I saw them before they saw me. Celeste and Julian were tucked in the corner near the bar, their heads too close together. She was laughing, the kind of laugh she saved for private moments. Her fingers brushed his arm as he leaned in, whispering something that made her smirk. It wasn't the casual kind of touch. It had heat. I stood there, blinking like an idiot. I told myself I was imagining things. That maybe it was innocent. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe. I spotted Kendra, Celeste's assistant, by the oysters. She was sipping white wine and chatting with a chef from Napa. I walked over, trying to keep my voice light. Hey, have you seen Celeste? She looked up and smiled. Oh, she left about 20 minutes ago. She said she was catching a ride with Julian. Something about checking out the rooftop bar at the Victor. My stomach dropped. With Julian? Kendra nodded, oblivious. Yeah, said it'd be fun. She told me to let you know if you asked. Fun. The word echoed in my skull like a punchline to a bad joke. I mumbled a thanks and walked away, heart thudding like a drumline. I pushed through the crowd, barely hearing the music or the clinking glasses. Out in the parking structure, the cold air hit me like a slap. I scanned the rows until I spotted Celeste's shawl, wine-colored velvet, hanging from the edge of a convertible's passenger door. I stepped around a concrete pillar just in time to see her. They were pressed close together, Julian's hand on her hip, her fingers curled around his lapel. Their mouths were inches apart, not kissing, not yet, but it was obvious they had been, or were about to. Celeste was smiling, softly, like I used to make her smile. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. She looked up and froze. Julian turned, that smug smirk still on his lips, like getting caught was part of the game. Celeste straightened, brushing imaginary dust from her dress. Daniel. That was all she said. My chest felt like it was caving in. I didn't yell, didn't cry. I just stood there, watching her shift from caught to composed in less than 5 seconds. I think that's what hurt the most. Not the embrace, not the secrecy, but how calm she was, like this wasn't a betrayal, just a small inconvenience. Like I was the one interrupting. I turned and walked away before I did something I'd regret. But even as my feet moved, I knew something inside me had changed. I'd never be the same again. I didn't sleep that night. I went home alone, my stomach twisted into something ugly. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them again, Celeste and Julian in the shadows of that parking structure, like it was their own little world. Like I wasn't even part of the picture anymore. She came home around 2 in the morning. I heard the keys jingle, the door click softly shut. I was sitting on the couch, still in my dress shoes and blazer, hands clenched together so tightly I could feel my pulse in my palms. She didn't even flinch when she saw me. Oh, you're up. That was all she said, kicking off her heels like it was just another late night. I stood up slowly, the words fighting to get past the lump in my throat. Where were you? She walked to the kitchen like she didn't hear me, pulled a bottle of water from the fridge, took a long sip, and leaned against the counter. Out. With Julian? I asked, though we both knew the answer. She tilted her head, considering me like I'd just asked if the sky was blue. So what if I was? I swallowed hard. You left the gala with him. You didn't tell me. You didn't answer my calls. I saw you, Celeste. In the parking garage. She rolled her eyes and pushed off the counter. Okay, relax. It wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal. I laughed, bitter and sharp. You were wrapped around him like. Oh, come on, Daniel. Her voice cracked like a whip. It was just a little flirting. God forbid I have some fun. I stared at her. Fun? She shrugged. You've gotten so boring. Always working. Always baking. You come home smelling like flour and butter. You used to have fire in you. Now you're just, she made a vague gesture at me. Domesticated. My jaw tightened. I didn't realize being stable and loyal made me a punchline. She smiled, but it was cold. Loyal's just another word for boring, sweetheart. I felt something splinter inside me. I had spent years building a life with her. Our condo, our Sunday routines, the stupid couples brunches. I thought it meant something. But standing there, watching her toss it aside like a stale croissant, I realized something terrifying. She didn't miss a beat. No guilt. No apology. Just that same detached amusement in her voice, like this was all a game and I'd fallen behind. You're not even mad, I said, my voice low. You're making jokes. She crossed her arms and tilted her head. What do you want from me, Daniel? Tears. A confession? You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Because you made me feel small, I snapped. You humiliated me. In front of everyone. At a gala where I was supposed to be celebrated. And you? Oh, please, she cut in. Don't act like some victim. You've had the perfect husband act on autopilot for years. This, whatever happened tonight, it just woke me up a little. That's all. There it was. That final twist of the knife. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even conflicted. She was amused. Detached. Like I was the one being dramatic for reacting at all. I stared at her, and for the first time in our marriage, I didn't see the woman I fell in love with. I saw a stranger wearing her face. And somehow, that hurt more than anything. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just turned, grabbed my keys, and walked out. The elevator ride down felt endless. I stepped out onto the cold sidewalk and just kept walking, no destination in mind. Just this overwhelming need to move, to breathe, to get as far away from her as I could. My phone buzzed once in my pocket. I didn't look. I already knew it wasn't her. That night, I walked for hours. Past the lakefront, the quiet side streets, the glowing diners with people laughing inside. All of it felt like another world. A world where I didn't exist. By the time I made it home, the sun was threatening to rise. She was asleep or pretending to be. I didn't care. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the stove. It used to be my safe space. Where I created. Where I poured every bit of love into food. Now it felt hollow. Like everything else. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't know what to do next. The apartment was quiet the next morning. Too quiet. I woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and the sour taste of exhaustion clinging to my tongue. The bedroom door was still closed. I didn't even want to know if she was in there. I walked into the kitchen, out of habit more than hunger. The counters were clean, untouched. The smell of butter and sugar, usually lingering from late-night baking, was gone. Everything felt sterile, cold. I opened the fridge and stared at the rows of ingredients I always kept stocked. Cream, eggs, berries, a block of dark chocolate I'd been saving for a new tart recipe. I shut the door without taking anything out. My appetite was gone. It was Saturday, a day I usually reserved for trying new pastries or prepping for Monday's orders. But that day, I couldn't even bring myself to boil water. My hands, the same ones Celeste used to admire for how steady they were with delicate doughs, felt foreign. I paced the kitchen for a while. Saturday. Stood. Walked to the window. Sat again. My mind kept circling back to the night before. Her voice, sharp and amused, echoing in my head like a broken loop. Domesticated. You've gotten boring. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. Every word chipped away at me. It wasn't just the betrayal with Julian. It was everything behind it. The way she'd looked at me, like I was nothing more than furniture in her life. Comfortable, familiar, easy to ignore. Around noon, the bedroom door creaked open. Celeste walked out in one of my old t-shirts, her hair a mess, eyes still smudged with last night's eyeliner. She walked straight to the coffee maker without looking at me. Morning, she mumbled. I didn't answer. She poured a cup, added sugar, 3 spoonfuls, always 3, and leaned against the counter like we were just 2 roommates sharing a slow weekend. After a long sip, she finally looked up. Are we going to do this awkward thing all day? I blinked. Are you serious? What? She said with a shrug. We had a fight. Couples fight. You stayed out all night. I figured you needed to blow off steam. I stared at her. Celeste, I caught you wrapped around another man. And you're calling that a fight? She waved a hand like I was being melodramatic. We didn't sleep together. If that's what you're asking. I narrowed my eyes. That's your defense? You didn't sleep with him yet. She smirked a little. Don't put words in my mouth. You know what hurts more than what I saw? I said, my voice tight. The fact that you don't care. That you can stand there and make coffee like you didn't rip something out of me last night. She crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. No, I snapped. I'm being honest. Something's wrong with this marriage, Celeste. And I've been too blind to see it. She let out a short laugh, mean and dry. Finally. Took you long enough. I just stood there, stunned. She sipped her coffee again, then turned to put the mug in the sink. You've been living in this vanilla fantasy, Daniel. Routines, baking, the same conversations, the same restaurants. I needed something real, something exciting. And Julian was your answer? I said, my voice cracking. A man who reviews appetizers for a living? She smiled, cruel and casual. He made me feel something. My chest tightened. And I didn't. She shrugged. Not anymore. Silence filled the room. I looked around, at the copper pans I'd hung with care, the mixer she gave me on our 5th anniversary, the cookbook I'd left open on the counter, now untouched for weeks. Everything looked the same, but none of it felt familiar. I don't know who you are right now, I whispered. I'm someone who got tired of pretending, she said, her voice flat. And maybe it's time you stop pretending too. She left the room without another word. Just like that. I didn't follow her. I sat down at the kitchen table, elbows on my knees, head in my hands, and I stayed there for a long time. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something in me started to split. That afternoon, I tried to bake. I thought maybe if I could just get into my rhythm, it would quiet everything in my head. I pulled out ingredients, measured with muscle memory, preheated the oven. But I forgot the salt, burnt the crust, let the cream boil over. By the time I pulled the tart from the oven, it was lopsided and deflated. I stared at it and thought, that's me. That's exactly what I've become. Later, when I passed her in the hallway, we didn't speak. She was on the phone with someone, laughing. Probably Kendra. Or maybe him. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while she slept beside me like nothing had happened. And for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I wasn't home. The silence between us stretched out over the next few days like a heavy fog. We weren't fighting, not out loud, but there was no warmth left either. No effort. No pretending. We lived in the same space, moved around each other like strangers waiting for one of us to break first. I thought maybe it would pass. That maybe she'd feel something, regret, guilt, anything. But all I got was more of her quiet contempt and cold indifference. By the 4th day, I couldn't take it anymore. I was in the kitchen trying to fix another batch of pastries that kept collapsing in the middle. My focus was shot. Every swirl of icing came out uneven, every crust cracked. I dumped the whole tray in the trash. That's when I saw it. Her tablet was charging on the counter. It buzzed, lighting up with a message preview. Julian. Can't wait to taste more than just your tarts next week, winking face. Let's keep it discreet though. We don't want the doughboy catching on again. I froze. Discreet. Doughboy. My thumb tapped the screen before I could even think. The full thread opened. Dozens of messages, back and forth for weeks. Flirty, crass, intimate. Photos. Inside jokes. Plans to meet up. And all of it soaked in the kind of private language that only people having a full-blown affair used. I'd been so stupid. So willing to believe it was just fun or some passing thing. But this was real. Ongoing. Calculated. And they were laughing at me. My stomach turned, a thick wave of nausea rolling through me. My heart pounded in my ears as I stood there holding her tablet like it was something toxic. She walked in a few minutes later, wearing leggings and a cropped hoodie, sipping a smoothie like she was just back from yoga. Hey, she said casually, glancing at the trash bin. Another fail? I didn't say anything, just held out the tablet. Her face didn't change when she saw the screen. No surprise. No panic. Just this slow, almost bored sigh. Well, she said after a beat, I guess you saw it. That's it. I asked, my voice thin and trembling. That's all you have to say? She shrugged. What do you want, Daniel? An apology? A confession? A meltdown? You already had your little dramatic exit last week. What's left? You lied to me. Yeah, I did. She said it like she was telling me it might rain tomorrow. You made me believe we were just off track, I said. that we were in a rut. But this whole time, you've been living a second life. Celeste leaned against the counter, arms crossed. It's not a second life. It's just a different part of me. When you stopped noticing, my jaw tightened. That's your excuse? That I didn't notice you? You didn't, she said bluntly. You stopped looking at me like a woman. I became your sous chef, your roommate, your recipe tester. Julian, he saw me. He still does. I shook my head. He sees you as a game. She smiled bitterly. Maybe. But at least it's more than what you see. I took a step back, the words hitting harder than I thought they would. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The disdain. The resentment. It had been there for a while, I realized, in the sarcasm, the distance, the way she rolled her eyes whenever I talked about work. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Why didn't you just leave? I asked quietly. She looked at me for a long time. Then, with a shrug, because it was easy to stay. And just like that, something in me clicked. Or maybe snapped. I wasn't going to stay where I wasn't wanted. I wasn't going to beg for scraps of affection from someone who had already ridden me off. I walked to the bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out my suitcase. Celeste followed me, arms still crossed. What are you doing? I'm leaving, I said simply. She scoffed. Oh, come on. Now who's being dramatic? No, I said, looking her straight in the eye. I'm done. I'm not going to fight to keep a marriage you've already buried. She rolled her eyes. So you're just going to run away? No, I said. I'm walking away. There's a difference. I stuffed clothes into the suitcase, enough to get by. I could come back later for the rest. Or maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I'd leave everything behind. Start over. She leaned against the doorframe, watching me. You'll regret this, you know. You're throwing away everything we built. I zipped the suitcase and stood up. No, I said. You threw it away the moment you decided I wasn't enough. Her face twisted for a split second, maybe guilt, maybe just annoyance. I didn't care anymore. I grabbed my keys and wallet, slung the suitcase over my shoulder, and walked to the door. As I opened it, I heard her voice one last time. This doesn't make you strong, Daniel. It just makes you lonely. I paused, hand on the knob. I've been lonely for a long time, I said. At least now, I won't be lying to myself about it. And then I stepped out. The door clicked shut behind me. I moved into a small studio above an old friend's bakery in Logan Square. It smelled like cinnamon and yeast and burnt sugar at all hours of the day, and I liked that. I didn't need much, a mattress on the floor, 2 pans, a scratched-up coffee table I found on Craigslist. I told myself it was temporary. But even then, I knew part of me didn't want to go back to anything bigger. The silence was deafening at first. Celeste's voice wasn't in the background anymore, asking me if I had picked up the dry cleaning or if I was going to experiment with those passion fruit things again. No clinking glasses or sarcastic laughter drifting from the living room. Just the hum of the fridge and the occasional sound of the baker downstairs slamming a tray into the oven. I kept thinking I'd feel free, like I'd stepped out of a burning building and could finally breathe again. But what I felt was hollow, like something had been carved out and I hadn't even realized it was missing until now. I couldn't sleep. My brain refused to turn off. Every night, I'd lie there staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying everything, the gala, her smirk, Julian's texts. That one line haunted me. We don't want the doughboy catching on again. It played over and over like a bad song stuck in my head. I laughed when I first read it, but not because it was funny. I laughed because it made me feel like a joke, a character in someone else's punchline. I started to forget things. I burned crusts I could have made blindfolded. I left ingredients out of dough I'd been making for years. I'd walk out of the studio without my wallet, or stare into the fridge for 20 minutes before remembering I wasn't even hungry. People tried to check in. My coworker Juno left me a voicemail I never returned. My sister sent a text asking if I needed anything. I told her I was fine. I wasn't. The worst part? I didn't miss Celeste. I missed the version of me that existed when I believed in her. The guy who thought they were a team, who thought he had built something that would last. I missed believing that someone had chosen me, really chosen me. Now all I could see was the manipulation in hindsight. The way she used to tilt her head and say, "You don't mind, do you?" right before changing plans or inviting people over without asking. The way she laughed a little too hard when people called me the sweet one. Like being decent was a weakness. One afternoon, I broke down in the middle of Mariano's. I had gone in to grab butter and ended up standing frozen in the baking aisle, staring at a row of cake flour bags. Something about the brand, it was the one she always insisted we use. It just holds the structure better, she'd say. I used to roll my eyes, but I'd buy it anyway, And suddenly there I was, gripping the shopping cart like a lifeline, trying not to cry in front of a grandmother picking out canned peaches. I left the cart in the middle of the aisle and walked out. Back at the studio, I collapsed onto the mattress and stared at the ceiling for hours. I couldn't even tell what time it was. I just knew I felt broken. Not in pieces, that would have been easier. I felt melted, like something that used to be solid and useful had just become formless. One night, I opened my phone and found a string of messages from Celeste. No apology. No explanation. Just little snippets. You left some books. Julian says he feels bad. You're overreacting. I hope you're not planning to make this some dramatic thing. I deleted them all without replying. She didn't deserve my words anymore. But even with the silence, the ache didn't go away. What finally broke the spiral was a simple thing. A croissant. I was standing at the sink, half-dressed, still in pajama pants, when the smell of butter wafted in from downstairs. I hadn't eaten all day. I walked down to the bakery without thinking. Marco, the owner, and an old friend from culinary school, was pulling trays from the oven. He looked up, surprised. Jesus, man. You look like a ghost, he said. Can I just sit? I asked. He pointed to the folding chair near the back door. Yeah, but only if you eat. He handed me a croissant. I took a bite. It flaked perfectly. The layers collapsed in on each other just right. It didn't taste like forgiveness, but it tasted like something real. Marco didn't ask questions, just kept working while I sat there and ate in silence. After a few minutes, he said, you know we could use help this weekend. We're doing a pop-up. Brunch boxes. All scratch-made. Real simple stuff. You in? I stared at him. Yeah, I said finally. Yeah, I think I am. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start. That weekend, I put on my apron again. Marco's pop-up brunch was nothing fancy, just card tables, a chalkboard menu, and trays of handmade pastries we boxed up for people on the sidewalk. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like myself. Not the version Celeste made me question, but the real me. The one who loved the smell of warm butter. The one who could lose track of time piping lemon curd into still warm crullers. It was chaotic. The crowd was bigger than expected, and half our receipts were scribbled on paper towels. But I was moving again, working with my hands, laughing at Marco's terrible jokes, focused on getting things just right. The ache was still there, but it stopped bleeding. It started to scab. After the rush, Marco handed me a coffee and plopped down beside me on the curb. You're still breathing, he said, elbowing me lightly. That's something. Barely, I said, sipping. But yeah, I'm still here. He looked at me for a long second. You want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not yet. He nodded, didn't push. That's why I liked him. No fake sympathy, no pretending to understand. Just space. Room to be a mess without judgment. The following week, I baked for myself. Just for me. Old family recipes, my grandma's shortbread, the honey buns my dad used to bring home from the corner store, a version of the cherry almond tart I made in culinary school. I didn't post anything. Didn't box them up. Just baked them, tasted them, tossed the bad ones, started again. The studio smelled like home again. I stopped checking Celeste's social media. Stopped wondering what she was doing, or if Julian had gotten bored yet. It didn't matter anymore. Not really. She still texted, every few days. I never answered. They weren't real messages, just breadcrumbs. Little reminders that she still thought I was orbiting her somehow. I still have your mixer. Want me to drop it off? Saw your name in the paper. Congrats on the pop-up. Guess you're surviving without me. Hope you're not telling people lies about what happened. Each one I deleted without opening. Every time, it got easier. At night, the silence didn't scare me anymore. I made peace with it. Started enjoying it, even. I found myself lingering in the quiet moments, cooking dinner with the radio low, reading old recipe books by the window, sitting on the fire escape with a beer and just breathing. One afternoon, I went downstairs to the bakery and Marco tossed me a set of keys. I'm heading to a wedding next weekend. You're in charge. I caught the keys midair, brow raised. You sure? You've been running circles around me the last 2 weeks. It's like someone lit a fire under your ass. Or someone blew up my life and I'm distracting myself, I muttered. He smirked. Whatever works, man. I took the keys. Held them in my palm for a while after he walked off. That night, I wrote down a menu. Nothing fancy. Just a small set of pastries that felt like me. Citrus scones. Almond twists. Something new with blackberries and cream cheese I'd been thinking about for months but never had the nerve to try. I didn't tell anyone. Just opened early that Sunday morning, unlocked the door, put out a sign, and waited. People came. Not in droves, but enough. A few regulars, some curious folks from the neighborhood. They tried the scones, smiled, told me they hadn't tasted anything like that in years. One guy asked if I catered weddings. I told him I didn't, not yet. When I closed up that afternoon, I sat on the back step with flowers still on my apron and stared up at the sky. I felt steady. Not whole, maybe. Not yet. But grounded. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed Celeste to feel like someone. She wasn't my anchor anymore. I was. The knock came just after closing one Wednesday evening. I was sweeping up behind the counter, apron still tied, the last of the trays cooling by the window. The sky outside was soft and pink, the kind of quiet, peaceful into a long day that I had started to treasure. When I opened the door, Celeste was standing there. She looked different. Not in any dramatic way, same sleek coat, same polished makeup, but something was off. Her eyes were red. Her smile, small and tentative. She looked unsure. That was new. "Hey," she said, her voice small. I didn't move. Just held the door and stared at her. She swallowed. "Can I come in?" I thought about saying no. Really thought about it. But old habits die hard. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, heels clicking against the tile. Her eyes scanned the bakery, landing on the tray of hand pies still steaming on the rack. "It still smells like you in here," she said, almost wistfully. I didn't respond. She turned to face me, taking a deep breath. "Look, I know I don't deserve a warm welcome. I know I messed up. Big time." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "So why are you here?" Celeste looked down, then back up, her voice shaking slightly. "Because I was wrong. About everything. Julian, that whole thing, it was a mistake. A stupid, selfish mistake. I thought I wanted excitement. Something different. But I didn't realize how much I had until I lost it." I raised an eyebrow. "Did he dump you?" Her mouth tightened. "It's not about him." "No," I said calmly. "It never was. It was always about you." She looked like I'd slapped her. "I came here to apologize," she said quietly. "To ask if maybe there's a way back. For us." I let that sit in the air for a moment. "You want to come back?" I said slowly. "After all of it. After making me feel like I was nothing. After lying to my face. After mocking me in messages I wasn't supposed to see." She blinked rapidly, tears forming now. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did," I said. "And not just by cheating. By treating our life like it was some lifeless routine. Like I was a boring recipe you couldn't be bothered to finish." She took a step closer. "I was angry. Lost. But I see it now. You were solid, Daniel. You always showed up. You gave a damn. I didn't appreciate it until I had to live without it." I looked at her, really looked. The glossy hair, the tailored coat, the trembling hands. She was the same person, but the illusion was gone. I could finally see through it all. "I used to think I needed you," I said. "That I was lucky just to be chosen by someone like you." Her eyes lit up, hopeful. "But now I know better," I finished. "I wasn't lucky. I was blind." Her face crumpled. "So that's it? You're really done?" I nodded. "I am." She turned away for a second, wiped under her eyes, then looked back at me with something like anger. "God, you've changed." "Yeah," I said. "I have." She walked toward the door, her heels quieter this time. Just before she stepped out, she turned back one last time. "You'll regret this." I shook my head. "No. I regret staying as long as I did." She didn't have a response. Just stood there for a second longer, then pulled open the door and walked out into the dusk. I didn't watch her leave. I went back to sweeping, back to closing out the register, back to the scent of cardamom in the air. And for the first time in months, my chest didn't ache when I thought about her. It didn't burn. It didn't collapse. It just didn't feel anything. That night, I slept without waking once. After that night, something shifted. Not all at once. Not like a door slamming shut. More like the slow, quiet turning of a lock from the inside. Celeste didn't show up again. She didn't call, didn't text. Maybe she finally understood. Or maybe she was just too proud to try a second time. Either way, the silence felt like peace. I started going on long walks after work. Through Palmer Square Park. Past the mural-covered alleys and the little bookstores tucked between taco shops and bike repair places. I'd sit on a bench with a coffee and watch the world move, dogs pulling their owners, kids chasing pigeons, couples leaning into each other like no one else existed. I didn't envy them. I just observed. Content to be still. The bakery became more than just a job again. It became a rhythm, a refuge. The early mornings didn't bother me anymore. I liked the quiet before sunrise, the way the mixer filled the room with noise that didn't need translation. I started donating leftover pastries to the community fridge down the block. One day, a kid came in with chocolate smudged across his face and told me the brioche was better than cake. I gave him a second one for free. "Don't tell your mom," I said with a wink. He giggled like I'd handed him a treasure. Moments like that stayed with me longer than I expected. I got involved in a weekend cooking event for the neighborhood, nothing big, just a folding table and some donated ingredients. I made mini hand pies and helped a few kids shape dough into awkward little stars. They were messy and uneven, but they smiled like they'd just made gold. That night, as I walked home, I realized I hadn't thought about Celeste once. Not in a bitter way. Not in a look how far I've come way. Just not at all. I climbed the stairs to the studio, tossed my keys on the counter, and sat down on the bed. The room smelled like citrus and sugar. The mixer hummed faintly downstairs. Everything was exactly as I'd left it. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through photos, old ones of us. Trips. Birthdays. Her holding a champagne glass, me with flour on my cheek. They didn't sting anymore. I paused on one, us at the opening of my first restaurant gig. She was in red, lips glossy, hand on my chest. I looked so happy. I stared at it for a long second, then tapped and held. Delete photo? I hit yes. The screen went blank. Just like that, she was gone. And I didn't flinch. Later, I made dinner, pasta with garlic, butter, and herbs I'd picked up from the market. Nothing fancy, just good food. Real food. I poured a glass of wine and ate slowly. No music, no TV, just the sound of my own breath and the occasional creak from the floor above. I didn't feel victorious, or sad, or angry. I just felt like myself. That night, I wrote in my notebook for the first time in months. New recipes. Ideas. A list of flavor combinations I wanted to try. Lavender and white peach. Black sesame and orange zest. Apple cider and sage. I wrote without thinking, without censoring. Just letting the ideas come. For me. Not for a menu. Not for someone else's approval. Just because I wanted to. As I closed the notebook and turned off the lamp, I caught my reflection in the window. Same face. Same hands. But something in my eyes had changed. I wasn't chasing anything anymore. Not love, not validation, not forgiveness. I'd stopped looking backward. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was curious about what came next. It happened on a Sunday. I was at the Logan Square Farmers Market, browsing for ingredients I didn't really need, more out of habit than anything else. I liked the noise, the smells, the warmth of people brushing past with canvas bags full of fresh greens and crusty loaves. I stopped at a small spice stand tucked between a honey vendor and a booth selling homemade soaps. The table was cluttered with little glass jars, paprika, cardamom, sumac, star anise. I picked up a tin labeled smoked cinnamon, mostly because I'd never heard of it before. Good pick, a voice said. That one's a sleeper hit. Try it in brownies. Changes your whole perspective on chocolate. I looked up and met her eyes, warm brown, full of spark. She wore a linen apron streaked with turmeric, her curly hair pulled back under a bandana. Her name tag said Mia. I smiled. I usually stick to the classics, but I might give it a shot. That's the thing about classics, she said, leaning on the table. They're only classics because people stopped experimenting. We talked for a few minutes about baking, spices, market crowds. It wasn't flirty. It wasn't forced. Just easy. Comfortable. Before I walked off, she handed me a small sample pack of something labeled hibiscus vanilla. Try that in shortbread, she said. It'll either be amazing or terrible. Either way, you'll know. That night, I did try it. And she was right. It was weird. But weird in a way that made me want to try it again. Adjust the ratios. Add a little lemon. Maybe cut the sweetness next time. The following Sunday, I went back. Not because I needed anything, but because I hoped she'd be there again. She was. This time, we talked longer. I learned she was part owner of a spice shop in Humboldt Park. Used to be a pastry chef too, until the kitchen life burned her out. I'd rather sell the flavors now and let other people deal with the oven stress, she joked. We started seeing each other after that. Not dating, exactly, not at first. Just spending time. She'd drop off samples. I'd bring her pastries in return. We'd sit on the bench outside her shop, passing bites back and forth, talking about everything and nothing. One night, after a long walk, we ended up back at my studio. She sat on the counter while I made tea, dipping her spoon into the leftover lemon curd I had chilling in the fridge. "You always this neat when you cook alone?" she asked, watching me wipe down the stove. I shrugged. "Not always. Old habits." "You look happier now," she said. I paused. "Then when?" She met my eyes. "Then the first time I saw you." I didn't answer right away. Just handed her the mug and took a sip of mine. We didn't talk about exes. Not in detail. She knew I had been married. I knew she had left a long-term thing that went sour. We didn't dig. It wasn't avoidance. It was understanding. The past didn't need to explain the present. We were just there. Now. No performances. No pressure. Sometimes we'd cook together. She'd bring weird things, chili threads, black garlic powder, grains I couldn't pronounce. I'd turn them into something edible, and we'd eat on the floor, legs tangled, laughing when something turned out awful. It didn't feel like starting over. It felt like starting different. One night, she brought over a bottle of wine and said, "So, I heard through the neighborhood grapevine you're thinking about opening your own place again." I raised an eyebrow. "That's so?" "Yep. Word travels fast when people like your croissants." I leaned back. "Maybe. I don't know. I like where I'm at. No pressure. No staff meetings." She smiled. "Well, if you ever do, I know someone who sells weird spices and has opinions about scone textures." I grinned. "I'll keep that in mind." I didn't feel like I needed her. That was the best part. I didn't feel like something was missing until she walked in. She didn't fill a void, she just added flavor. The right kind. No drama. No wounds begging to be healed. Just presence. Ease. And for once, I wasn't holding my breath waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was just living. It was an ordinary afternoon when it happened. The kind that doesn't try too hard to be anything special. Mia and I had just finished lunch at a little cafe near the park, tomato soup, grilled cheese with fancy pickles, a slice of lemon cake we split without arguing over the last bite. We were walking down Milwaukee Avenue, the air warm but not hot, the kind of weather that makes you think maybe things are finally aligning the way they should. And then I saw her. Celeste. She was sitting by the window of a cafe across the street. Same silky hair, same perfect posture. Her laugh rang out across the street, unmistakable, polished, loud enough to turn heads. Sitting across from her was a man in a sharp blue blazer, leaning in a little too close, his hand on hers in that overly familiar way I used to know well. I froze for a second, not because I missed her, not because I wanted to run across the street and say something, but because I didn't feel a thing. No tightness in my chest, no bitter aftertaste in my throat, just a quiet moment of recognition, like spotting an old photograph in a drawer, familiar, but far away. Mia noticed me slowing down. "You okay?" I nodded, still watching. "That's her." Mia didn't ask who. She didn't have to. Celeste didn't see me. She was too wrapped up in her new world, her new audience. And I stood there for a second longer, watching the woman I once thought I'd grow old with tilt her head and laugh for someone else. Then I turned away. Mia reached for my hand without saying anything, lacing her fingers through mine. We kept walking. I didn't look back. A few blocks later, we stopped at the corner before crossing the street. The light changed. Cars passed. And in the stillness between, I realized something. It was over. Not just the marriage. Not just the anger or the grief. All of it. The guilt. The questioning. The wondering if I should have fought harder, stayed longer, been someone different. Gone. I looked at Mia, her calm presence, the way she didn't press for more, didn't try to fill the silence with pity or promises. She just stood beside me. That was enough. We kept walking, hand in hand, into the afternoon. I didn't need to reclaim anything anymore, because I had already come home to myself.